Hello and welcome to the Soul Wisdom Exchange. I'm Regina Curtis, creator of Matri. I'm a soul wisdom mentor and a soul sourced business strategist. It's always a mouthful to say that. So, we're here to talk about soul wisdom. What does that mean? Soul wisdom is, in my definition, are authentic ways of knowing how we receive information and process it, and being how we express that information and integrate it into our lives. And the ways in which that wisdom speaks to and through us, those are our soul wisdom languages. Today on the show, I have Daisy, who's the creator of Little Buddha. Daisy, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Yay, excellent. Well, tell us a little bit about who you are and some of your soul wisdom languages.
Yes. So I am the founder of Little Buddha, and we are a natural skincare company. So I make a lot of things like bath bombs, soaps, body butters, all the good things. And then I also do energy work. So I do that under Lotus Rising. So I combine a lot of different modalities with the work that I do. I include like crystal therapy, aromatherapy, yoga therapy, Ayurveda, and some other energy clearings within the energy work that I do.
Thanks.
So overall, it's all more of like a holistic, clean lifestyle companies that I work with or that I do.
So, clean, holistic lifestyle inside and out, right? I love it. So, tell me a little bit about how you came to this place. What was your inspiration?
Well, prior to what I do now, I was working in the finance industry for about 14 years. And I'm very grateful for that time in my life because I've learned so much um, throughout that journey in my life. And I realized I didn't really have true passion for what it was that I was doing. I felt very robotic. I lost touch with myself. I was in a relationship that was also maybe not for my highest good at that time. And I felt like I was almost a shell of,
Mm.
and my mom kept telling me about Reiki over and over and over again because she's Reiki attuned as well as my aunt in Mexico, and they do a lot of different types of energy work. And I resisted and resisted and resisted. And finally, I went to go see a Reiki practitioner, and she kind of opened my eyes to finding out, who I really was and reconnecting with myself and finding my true passion. And within energy work and Reiki, I found what my true calling was. And that's kind of where Little Buddha came and developed. And then Lotus Rising then came after that as well. So it almost felt like my life had turned upside down. And then I found what passion.
Isn't that the way it happens so often? Yeah, it's interesting because there's some kind of shift, right? Like I was interviewing a woman named Becky Fleischer the other day, and she was talking about her podcast that she has, and one of her first episodes was called, oh gosh, what is it called? It's something about what the shift transformation happens, or like I can't remember what the last part of it, but it was like what the like shift basically. Anyway, you get the point. I totally butchered it. Becky, if you're watching this, I apologize, and I will find the correct name of your podcast episode. But I mean, you kind of know where I'm going with this, right? Like you have that moment where you're like, what the hell is going on here? Like, or there's something that just like suddenly you come into your day and you're like, oh no, this isn't right. Like this doesn't feel right. And I know a lot of times I interview people here and we have conversations, and there's this moment, right? That almost, like you just explained it, like you felt like it was turned upside down, etc. And in actuality, in our lives, it doesn't actually happen just in a moment, right? There's a lot of things that lead up to it. And even you were just saying your mom was telling you about Reiki. This was something she was sharing with you. She previously had already been doing, practicing Reiki, and your aunt had. And so this was an awareness that was already available to you, but it was at that moment of shift where you were like, okay, now it all is clear. Like there's a moment of clarity. And when we look back at it, it can sometimes feel like, oh yeah, just one day I woke up and I knew and everything changed and I went about my life in a completely different way. But that actually, and sometimes it actually happens that way. But a lot of times it's like there's some kind of process leading up to it, and also, moving on past that. I apologize for the beeping. There is construction happening outside of my window. So
no worries.
But so talk about, I'm going to put myself on mute after I ask this question, but talk about that for you a little bit, because there was this moment, right? Like, but that moment, it had some lead up, but then it also had probably some, I don't know, wind down as you slid into this new way of being. And what soul wisdom was coming in for you at that time? Like, how were you knowing that this is the change that needed to happen?
It's a good question. When I started seeing the Reiki practitioner, she was almost became a mentor for me, and was kind of guiding me and pushing me to try different things, and working to push myself out of the comfort zones that I had put myself into. That I realized that at that point, if I didn't make a change, I was going to continue in the same path where I was, and I was not a good place. And when I started to transitioning into these changes, I realized I started to feel better about the decisions that I was making. I started feeling better as a person, and I almost felt like I was coming back to life. And one of the biggest things for me that I'm so thankful is I had met so many different people who became almost my mentors, and that's really big for me. And I think anyone who's going through these shifts and transformations, having those people and that community around you that's supportive, whether it be women, whether it be whoever it is. But I never really, one of the biggest things for me during the transformation is having that community of women, because I never had that before. And I always, maybe in the corporate world, I always felt like we had to compete with each other. And when I started coming into this community of, more spiritual, like-minded women, I really, really, really appreciated that community of women and the support. And if I had questions, that they would support me. And so therefore now that's also something really important to me, because providing that mentorship, providing that guidance for other people going through those transitions is something that's really important to me. So that, I think, was really big for me, is having that mentorship and the community of strong, spiritual minded women.
I love that. For me, being in the role of soul wisdom mentor, of course, that's something that is important to me as well. And for me, mentorship is very different than, I don't know what the word I want to use to compare it to, but there's a leadership quality to it, but not in a way that is like me telling you what to do. It's me standing beside you, supporting you, empowering you, holding your hand, providing tools, and I think it's this very conscious, compassionate leadership style that is often missing in more of the corporate space. Sorry, my camera is like really funky, which is why I was trying to like reset it, but I don't know.
On my end, you look fine.
Okay. Well, before it's funny because before I looked pixelated on your end, but I looked fine on mine. So who knows? Technology is not being our friend today, but as long as people can hear and see what we're doing, it's all right. We can be fuzzy. But yeah, it's really, and mentorship, I think, comes in a lot of forms, and you can have many mentors at once, right? Whereas I feel like there's this I remember being really frustrated in my own corporate experience when I would look for mentors, right? Like that I would talk often about how I really thought that there wasn't a piece missing in what we were doing, that we didn't have a structure for mentorship or for leadership training, that often leadership training came from added responsibility. And added responsibility and leadership are not the same thing.
And then you don't want to ask for that because you're like, I already have my work plus more things
Yes.
on top of that, and it just adds more stress, not a positive thing.
No. And especially as a woman, I know my experience as a woman, and this is maybe not the same for all, but you alluded to this earlier too, where oftentimes we're in competition with each other. And so the very people who can be your mentors, who have that ability to be empathetic for your situation, often are also competing with you in some way, whether they're actively doing that or just within kind of the culture that you're in. You end up in this kind of innate competition with everyone around you.
Mm-hmm.
And it just becomes this really challenging and not very fulfilling kind of space, or at least it was for me.
I agree wholeheartedly, and it almost became like, if I help you, how is this going to help me? Kind of a mentality.
Yeah.
And when I removed myself from that environment, and then we just started connecting with other women who were going through the same things, and it was more of, how can I support you versus what am I getting out of this interaction. And it almost became like, when I'm having a hard time, I get some help, and then when someone else is having a hard time, so it's almost like reciprocal help.
Yeah. It's what I call a sustainable environment, right? Like my big thing right now, I think it always has been, but especially with the work that I'm doing right now, is creating sustainable environments where it's not just, okay, so I might go on a tangent here, but if you'll hold that space with me for a moment, we can explore it together. So essentially, when you go into entrepreneurship, you're looking, at least I was, and I find that a lot of people become an entrepreneur because you're looking to create something in a different way. The way that it made sense to you, or the form that it existed in before, or maybe it didn't even have a form before, didn't meet your needs. So you start to bring this into your own life, right? I'm going to find this way to do the thing that I need that meets my specific needs. And oh, by the way, I have been able to make this work, and this could be beneficial to other people. Let me share it with the world, right? Like, this is a story that I've heard, an origin story, so many times from soulpreneurs. And you go into that thinking, okay, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to share this with the world, but you don't necessarily do it because you want to do it all by yourself, right?
Right.
You want to do it for yourself, but not necessarily by yourself. And then there becomes this stigma of, oh, well, you're an entrepreneur, you can do it all. But I don't want to do it all. I just want to do this piece that I do really well. And I want to support other people that need that thing, right? And oh, yeah, I'm human and I still need support from other people too. So sometimes that reciprocal relationship is, I give to you, you then are energized to give to someone else who then maybe gives to me. Like it's a whole ecosystem supporting each other versus it being just, I give to you, you give to me. I give to you, you give to me. I give to you. Because eventually we get depleted if we're just like only going in that one cycle.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And that's one of the things that I think has really transformed in my life, is having that community. So it's really just shifted my whole mentality on relationships with women, really.
Yeah.
Which was, so that was just a really big shift for me.
Well, the environment that you were in before, so your corporate space was pretty male centric, right? Is that really loud? Can you hear?
A little bit, but it's not too bad.
Okay, good. It's like dump trucks outside of my window. So, um, I swear they were quiet all morning. It's only when I start recording a live broadcast that they like kick it up. So, I don't know.
No.
Maybe I need to do these at like 6 a.m. Um, okay, so we've talked about that old environment, like what is not serving you, right? Like you were able to feel that in many ways in your body, in your mind, in your relationships. Um, Other people were noticing this and trying to give you tools, right? And what actually, like, what was going on in this? Hopefully it's okay for me to ask this, but what was going on in your body? Like you said, I felt so much better. I felt like I was coming home to myself. Can you explain a little bit about like what that actually felt like or how that showed up in your like embodied version of yourself?
Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest things, I think that when I used to, I would say my prior life, because I almost feel like that I've had two lives at this point, or multiple, but you know what I'm trying to say. I never felt comfortable within myself. I didn't want to be around people. I actually wanted to work in HR because I didn't want to deal with people, even though technically you do deal with a lot of people, but I wanted to be in the background scenes.
Yeah,
I didn't
makes
want to have,
sense.
I didn't want to have to communicate. I didn't want to deal with anybody. And then I realized it was because I wasn't really understanding how my personality was. And I understand that I was different, but I didn't understand that until I read a book. What book is it? Is it How to Live in the World of Being a Sensitive Person?
Something like that. Yeah, I think I know what book you're talking about, but
It's,
it's about being an empath, right?
yes. Yeah. And then once I understood what an empath was, I was like, holy crap, that's what I am. And it all made sense. And because I always felt like I had so many emotions and I couldn't put words to them. And I needed to retreat. I needed to be away from people because I felt tired sometimes, being drained. And then once I started to understand how I was and how I worked and how to recharge, then I started to really enjoy who I was versus trying to hide it.
Mm.
And even when I started talking to friends or people, like, you look happier. You don't look as they used to call me. They used to say I used to have the RBF face, the not happy face,
Yeah.
and because I didn't know how to deal with all these things. And then when I started to understand what an empath was, it completely shifted and almost made me start appreciating myself more. And I started losing weight. I was starting to shed, I think, that shell that I had created to protect myself. So it just felt like I was starting to become or really grasp who I really was and letting all of those shields that I had put up. I didn't know how to deal with being an empath prior or even knew what it was.
There's something about that what you just said about that shell, right, that you had put up. And earlier you said that you felt like you were a shell of yourself. And now you said I felt like I was shedding that shell, right? So it's interesting because what I'm seeing there in the way that you brought in these two different perspectives in your own exploration of it, right? When you said you feel like you have two different lives, it's because you were at one point living as the shell, right? And then you moved in and released that shell and became that embodied version of who you were rather than the expression of the protection that you were putting up to try to preserve that self that maybe had been taught you were too sensitive or even saying, I was different than other people. I would argue that you're not different than most people, that in fact, you have a lot of commonalities with what people are actually thinking and feeling and the way that they are. Not everyone, but a lot of us do have these ways of knowing and ways of being that we're taught are not the right way to exist, especially in certain environments, in the world of finance, in the world of business, in the world of academia, even. It's like, oh, you're here to learn, but only, but don't have emotions while you're learning. What? Like, how, how's that supposed to work?
Yeah.
Like emotions are only for relationships, but only certain relationships and only at certain times. Like there are all these rules about it. And that's really why I started doing this podcast, is because I wanted to have conversations with a whole bunch of different people living a whole bunch of different ways, and to see that there are millions, trillions, billions of ways for these same kind of characteristics, these same languages, right, to come through us.
Mhm.
And yet they are expressed differently, and they are received differently, and they are embodied differently, because each one of us is unique.
I agree wholeheartedly.
So now in your business and in your life, from this embodied, glowing, vibrant version of yourself.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I, by the way, have known Daisy through this transition. We met at the point when you were just kind of starting that journey, right?
Yep.
We took Reiki level 1 together. I was at a different yet similar part of my journey too, where, I went to Reiki training as a conscious way of embracing my ways of being, my ways of knowing, my intuition, and as an effort to really learn about those ways. And for you, I know you had been receiving Reiki at that point for a while, and now you were starting to transition it into this place of, okay, I'm going to embody this and do it myself and learn about it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So from this place now, where you are on your journey, talk to us about, what does that look like now in your business and in your life? How does Daisy show up now in a different way that's not as the shell, but the version of you who has shed that shell?
I think there's some days where I think like, yes, I got it, I'm great, and there's other days I'm like, what am I doing? So within energy work, I feel like it's been an underlying thing within my business and my life. And when I start to really appreciate who I am and the goals that I have for myself, I realize I am able to accelerate and move forward. And so it always changes and shifts within my life. And just I'm a creative person. So like I love to come up with tons of ideas, and I'm all over the place all the time. And then I realize when my energy isn't where I want it to be, I realize that's where I'm more all over the place. And so when I kind of really rein myself in and say, like, what are your true goals? What do you really want to accomplish? And then I start to kind of get more grounded within myself. So continuously having those things in place, like whether it be meditation, getting outside, enjoying nature, I notice that I reconnect with myself more by doing those things. So if that kind of answers your question.
So what I hear you say is, I am creative, right? I am a creative person. I also can, because you have this constant flow of creative energy, it can flow in many directions, which is a beautiful thing. However, you also have tools to help you settle in and receive them in a focused way, so that you can then alchemize those into these goals and amazing, beautiful products and services and collaborations that you do, right? So using that way of being, of like understanding that you can have this emotional, it's like a compass to be able to understand, okay, now I understand that I'm getting overwhelmed, right? This feels like a lot. Oh, wait, I have a tool that I can use. I have many tools that I can use. And I now know that this is the one that I can put into place because this is what I'm feeling I need. So you're showing up in a lot of the same ways, but in a very different version of those ways, right? Like you're showing up as an emotional being, as a creative being, and you're doing that in harmony with your ways of knowing and being and empowering them rather than trying to suffocate them.
Yes. Yes. And back to kind of what I was saying in the beginning, with mentorship. I
Mm-hmm.
have mentorship now within my product business and within my own life. And that's been a huge underlying thing for me, is having that mentorship and guidance, to continuously pull me through, especially because I'm so creative, and kind of just rein me in to focus on what it is that I need to accomplish to get me there.
Yeah, beautiful. I love it. So, where are you headed next? What are you working on?
Lots of things. Um, so in regards to like the business with
Mhm.
Buddha, we just finished a huge rebrand.
It's beautiful, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. So that's been a long time coming,
Mhm.
almost about a year of things, and now we're kind of tying up loose ends. Um, I really want to start now, besides Little Buddha, we have an exciting project with launching Lotus Rising, which is my energy work, and really
Mhm.
figuring out how I want what I want that to look like, and doing different types of collaborations and retreats on that side. And then, thanks to you, I have an opportunity to write a chapter
Yeah.
in a collaborative book.
Awesome. I'm so excited to read it.
Thank you. Thank you. But overall, I think the theme of this year is, or I guess maybe for the past 2 years, really, is taking myself out of my comfort zone
Mhm.
and putting in boundaries. So those are the two overlying themes that I'm noticing. I mean, I had a huge move from Chicago to Chattanooga,
Yes, you did.
and how that all happened was pretty crazy as well. It was 1 week, 10 people talked about Chattanooga, and I'm like, that seems like a sign from the universe. So I went for a long weekend to check it out, and I ended up moving here less than a month later.
I love it. That's totally something that, like, I talk about things in my life sometimes. I'm like, yeah, and I got this inspiration and then I did it. And people are like, what? You did what? You picked up your life and moved it from one city because people talked about it. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it totally made sense, didn't it?
That
But
sounds like, what did I do?
but you seem so at home there and so happy and just able to like be in nature and it really like there is just this vitality and this glow about you that really has been so present ever since you moved there. And I'm sad obviously because we used to live in the same city and um yeah, it was funny. Like I don't even know. Did I send you no, you just sent me a message and you're like, I'm having a going away party. And I was like, what? You're having a what? And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, all right, go for it. That's exciting. So I'll have to come visit you in Chattanooga. But yeah, it really does. Like when you can follow that soul wisdom, when that inspiration hits, and you are in tune with your ways of knowing and being, right? With you're in tune with the ways that the universe shows you signs and signals or confirmations, or whether you call that spirit or your higher wisdom or God or Mother Earth, whatever lens you receive that through. When that happens, you have that clarity and confidence, right? I talk about clarity and confidence all the time. And I know you well enough, I believe, to know that you wouldn't have just sold your house, bought a new house, picked up your life and your business, and moved away from your family, which I know is a really important part of who you are, without having clarity and confidence, right? So,
Yeah.
what did that look like for you?
The move or getting the signs in general?
The clarity and confidence. How did that show up for you?
I think just really trusting in the universe and letting go, because ideally, did that seem like a great idea? No. I had like a studio that my dad built in my home. I had a beautiful home. I had my family and I had my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know, but all I know is that I'm getting this push from the universe, and I have to listen to it." And sometimes you don't know what is on the other side of your decisions. I mean, because I could have just stayed there
Mm-hmm.
and continued in my comfort zone, but I realized coming here, being somewhere completely on my own, not knowing anybody, and almost rebuilding my business, my community, was really hard in the beginning. And I almost questioned, like, why did I do this? Why did the universe want me to do this? But now that I'm here, it makes sense. It's like I'm reconnecting with new people here. I'm rebuilding the community. So it's almost a reminder that you have the ability to create your own life the way that you need to. And so that I almost feel like it's like another third opportunity of life for me to restart it in the way that I choose.
Yeah, it totally does. So what I would call that is you've moved through a paradigm. You've had a paradigm shift, right? And I love to use the example of a lobster.
I'm excited to hear about this.
I love it. Oh, I come up with the weirdest things. I know. This is why I say I've embraced my weirdness, because I am a total weirdo and I love it and totally down with it. A lobster has to shed its shell. So, like, we hear a lot of times about transitions, transformations, and like the whole story of the butterfly. It's a beautiful story. I don't, devalue that. But a lobster has to, in order to grow into its new shell, it has to completely remove its old shell, and it becomes really raw and vulnerable. Like it has no shell, it has no protection. And as it grows its new shell for itself, it has this period of vulnerability, but it becomes too big for the shell and it gets uncomfortable and it has to release that in order to grow into this next version, right? And it creates it as it is growing, so it like grows into it and it forms it at the same time, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I feel like I like to say this thing where we create as we grow. And um and that's exactly, I mean, it's the story of the lobster. Totally weird, quirky side note. There's a Bjork song called like, I can't even remember what it's called, but it's something about Regina is the lobster. And it's a very, I mean, it's totally Bjork. So it's like Regina, and like there's this like flying airplane that looks like a lobster. It's like totally bizarre. But years ago, I was telling a coworker of mine, I was like, there's no songs ever that like say my name. Like there's no song about Regina. There's Brandy, there's, like all these Sandy, all the songs that like I feel like there are songs about these names. I was like, I can never find, let alone my name at all, but then to have it be spelled correctly because it's spelled with a Y. So anyway, this coworker that I had was like, oh, there's a song about you. And he played this song, and I was like, yep, that is indeed a song about Regina, and it is somehow accurate. It's totally bizarre. So
That's hilarious.
There's your little bit of culture for today. Go look up Regina the Lobster by Bjork.
You do. Thank you.
I even am kind of wearing Bjork hair today. So anyway, so that's the lobster story of transformation. And but yeah, it's right, like because sometimes you go into that cocoon and you dissolve and you come out transformed and you you learn to have your wings. And other times you go through this process where like you have to completely shed something, and then you're kind of there in this place of vulnerability, like, okay, I've shed this thing, and now what? Now I just wait. Now I wait for it to form. And you kind of have to, there's a stillness in that where you're still, but it's also like, there's more awareness, I think, than when you're in that cocoon, where sometimes when you're in the cocoon, it's just like, I have no idea what's going on, but it's like, it's a crazy mess. And I'm just focused on this. With that lobster version, it's like you can kind of watch and see things form, and you can actively choose, okay, I'm gonna take this risk, or I'm not gonna take that risk, right? I can stay in this safety zone, I can stay in this comfort zone behind this rock while I form the shell, or I can venture out a little bit, and I can do this, and I can allow that shell to form out in the open.
Yeah, and like even like with the book that I mentioned that I'm gonna be doing.
Tell us about the book. It's called Invisible No More.
Yes. And I had stepping into the step spotlight, which I think is almost perfect, or not. I think it is perfect, because I never enjoyed being the spotlight. I never enjoyed speaking. I didn't want to be seen, and now it's still sometimes hard for me to do these things, but like with Little Buddha, my social media manager has been really incredible and wanting me to be in front of the camera more. So we do a Wellness Wednesday every Wednesday to get me more comfortable. So it's continuously pushing yourself to do things. Maybe you might not enjoy them. They're not, it's not fun for me. But just to push yourself and be like, I did it. Even though maybe it's not something that I liked, but I did it, and I'm getting better, and I'm getting better, and getting better. So it's like every day taking a little piece of something maybe that you're not great at, but working at it and practicing. Because no one gets perfect, or no one does great things just the first time they do them. So it's just continuously pushing yourself out of like your comfort zone. And writing for me is not. I've always felt maybe I'm not the best writer, or like, who wants to hear my story? And
I do. You have fascinating stories. You're a great storyteller. Why would you not be a great writer?
Thank you. So it's getting out of your own way, really, and pushing yourself to do things that you never thought was possible. Like I never thought I would ever do something like that, or I never thought I would move somewhere completely different, or I never thought I'd be a business owner. So it's just like stopping and relishing in all the things that you're doing, and appreciating how far you've come, and appreciating your journey. And because people have always asked me like, oh, do you wish you would have started your business sooner? Like, no, because it happened the way it was supposed to happen when it happened. And sometimes people want to, or even myself, want to put the accelerator onto things and want things to happen overnight. And I'm realizing that sometimes when you have those growing pains, or those you hit your head against the wall, there's always reasons for everything. And once you start looking and saying, why did I have to experience this, and understanding the lessons from everything that happened, I think that's when you start to really shift your mindset. Which has been a really great, or a really useful tool for me in shifting, like, versus like, why is this happening to me, to like, what am I supposed to be learning from this? Huge thing for me this year.
Yeah, I think it's that shift between why is this happening to me and why is this happening for me, right? What is happening for me? And yeah, a lot of times those moments come with challenges. They come with having to step out of your comfort zone, and we can be pushed out of our comfort zone, or we can step out of our comfort zone, right? We can choose how we want to do that. Not to say that if you choose to do it, you'll never get forced out either, because not everything is in our control, right? And we are living in a world with other people and natural, elements and whatnot. I will say, my brain just went to a lot of different places, but I'm going to keep it at that. So anyway, there are things that are happening around us, and yet we can use those as a reflection of, okay, what can I take from this, and what can I give to this too? How can I interact with this or engage with this thing that's happening in my life and in the world in a way that is supportive of who I am and what I'm doing in the world, what I want to do. So I think you're a beautiful example of that, Daisy. And it's, for me, it's such an inspiration to have people like you in my life, because you are one of those people that I can look to that's like, okay, Daisy had this inspiration and she wanted to do it and she did it, and I think it's important for all of us to have those people in our lives, because we hear these stories sometimes, and I think this is why it is so important to tell your story and to write your story, and why I've written chapters in multiple books, because I want to share that, not to tell people like, oh, look what I did, but instead to be like, hey, I did this cool thing and you could do this cool thing too. And I got to meet all these other people who are doing amazing things in the world, and they become real examples of people doing the things that I want to do. So when you can connect with those people and get to know them and listen to their story and share your story with them, it all becomes so much more possible.
And I agree. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is getting that word out there. Like, you can do this. Like, if you have a dream, like, don't let other people tell you your dream is crazy. It could be, I don't know.
Well, for them, it might be, right? It might be something that they would never do.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it has to be that for you.
Exactly. And I think that was the biggest thing that I've always learned I'm starting to learn, is don't let other people talk you out of your dreams. And if you have a dream, go for it. And if it fails, at least you tried it, and you could do another thing. And I think there's so many people who want to just live in a little bubble of comfort, and maybe that works for them. But all I know is every single time that I push myself a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, life becomes so much more incredible.
Yeah, you expand that bubble, right? And your comfort zone actually becomes bigger, and it becomes brighter, and it bumps up against some other comfort zones of other people who are like, you're like, oh, hey, what are you doing over there? Let's put our bubbles together because it looks like fun over there. Yeah, I totally agree. I love it. So you are going to be one of the authors in Invisible No More, which is through Express Yourself Publishing with Hollis Citron. And because I have worked with her too, and I think she's amazing and holds such a beautiful space, I'm going to give it a plug here and now. I think there's a few more spots left. So if you're wanting to share your story too about really stepping out of your comfort zone, right? Stepping into the spotlight and allowing yourself to shine and give your gifts to the world, contact me or contact Daisy or contact Hollis if you know her, and get in that book. Yes. Daisy, tell us, I know you're writing this book. You've got some big launches, it sounds, coming out with Lotus Rising, right? Tell us a little bit more about that and how people can find you if they want to work with you.
So right now, everything is still going through my website, which is thelittlebuddhabydaisy.com. And we'll be launching, I'm hoping by second quarter, with this own website and social media. But for right now, you can just reach out to me there. And yeah, that's the best way. Or you could, if you're following me on Instagram, you could send me a message through there or an email. Well, at littlebuddhabydaisy@gmail.com.
Beautiful. So your healing work, your Ayurvedic work, and your products, right? Your clean products. And also you have on there some crystals, some jewelry still, right?
Crystals, jewelry, some little Buddha gear. So
nice. There's all sorts of, it's like a playground, a metaphysical playground in there. So go check it out. I always have my little Buddha, like, I can't even see. Yep, there it is. My peppermint little Buddha. You see me put this on every episode. It's always daisies, I promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was so much fun. Thank you for being here. Keep shining your light in the world and doing amazing things. And for everyone who came on live, who's watching in the future, at whatever point that is, you're in exactly the right place at the right time. And I'm so glad you're here. So until next time, Daisy, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.